The bullet missed Eleanor Dawson's head by 3 inches, and that was when she decided men were worth less than the dust beneath her boots. Wyoming Territory, 1878. The wagon rocked violently as Eleanor gripped the reins tighter, her knuckles white beneath leather gloves worn thin from months of travel. She had trusted him. She had believed every honeyed word that dripped from Marcus Trent's lips like poisoned syrup. And now here she was, racing across the unforgiving terrain with nothing but the clothes on her back and a single carpet bag stuffed with everything she owned, fleeing the man who had sworn to love and protect her. The horses were tiring. She could feel it in the way they pulled against the traces, their powerful muscles straining with each desperate stride. Behind her, Marcus's men were closing the distance. She could hear their whooping calls carried on the wind, could almost feel their breath on the back of her neck despite the yards that separated them. Eleanor had been a fool, a complete and utter fool. She had met Marcus in Philadelphia 6 months ago, a charming businessman who spoke of opportunities in the West, of land and fortune waiting to be claimed. He had courted her properly, meeting her father, bringing flowers, speaking of marriage and children. Her father had approved the match, seeing in Marcus a man of substance and ambition. What her father had not seen, what Eleanor herself had not seen until it was too late, was that Marcus Trent was a criminal. A thief and a con man who specialized in marrying women of modest means, draining their accounts, and disappearing into the night. Except Eleanor had discovered his plans too early, had overheard him speaking with his associates about cleaning out her inheritance the night before their planned wedding. She had run. Taken the wagon he had bought for their journey west, loaded it with supplies meant for their new life, and fled into the darkness. That had been 4 days ago. 4 days of constant movement, of looking over her shoulder, of jumping at every sound. The wagon wheel hit a rock, and the entire frame lurched sideways. Eleanor felt herself lifting from the seat, felt gravity seize her with greedy fingers, and then she was airborne. The ground rushed up to meet her with brutal force. The impact drove the air from her lungs and sent stars exploding across her vision. She could hear the wagon continuing without her, could hear the horses panicking as the vehicle careened wildly across the landscape. Whoa there, easy now. A deep voice cut through the ringing in her ears, calm and steady despite the chaos. Eleanor blinked, trying to focus through the pain radiating from her shoulder and hip. A man moved past her with confident, ground-eating strides, heading toward her runaway wagon. He was tall, broader across the shoulders than any man she had ever seen, with dark hair that fell past his collar and muscles that strained against his buckskin shirt with every movement. He caught the first horse's bridle with one large hand, speaking in low, soothing tones that Eleanor could not quite make out. The horses slowed, then stopped, their sides heaving with exertion. The man stroked the lead horse's neck, still speaking softly, gentling the frightened animals with a patience that seemed at odds with his imposing size. Eleanor tried to stand and immediately regretted it. Her left ankle screamed in protest, sending white-hot pain shooting up her leg. She collapsed back onto the hard earth with a cry she could not quite suppress. The man turned at the sound, his eyes finding her instantly. They were gray, she realized as he approached. Gray like storm clouds over mountains, set in a face weathered by sun and wind but handsome in a rough-hewn way that spoke of strength and survival. His jaw was covered with several days' worth of dark stubble, and there was a wariness in his expression that suggested he had learned not to trust strangers any more than she had. "You are hurt," he said. It was not a question. He knelt beside her with surprising grace for a man of his size, his hands hovering near her ankle without touching. "May I?" Eleanor hesitated. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to refuse, to somehow drag herself back into the wagon and continue running. But even as the thought formed, she could hear the sound of approaching horses. Marcus's men. They were coming. "Please," she whispered, hating the desperation in her voice. "They are coming. You have to help me." The man's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. He turned his head, listening, and Eleanor knew he could hear what she heard. 5 riders, maybe 6, coming hard and fast across the open ground. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I do not know. My ankle right then." Without another word, he slipped one arm beneath her knees and another around her back, lifting her as easily as if she weighed no more than a child. Eleanor gasped, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck as he strode toward the wagon. He set her in the back, among the supplies she had stolen from Marcus, then moved to unhitch one of the horses with practiced efficiency. "What are you doing?" Eleanor asked. "They will follow the wagon," he said simply. "We will not be with the wagon." He slapped the second horse on the rump, sending both animals racing off with the empty wagon bouncing and rattling behind them. Then he turned back to Eleanor, leading a massive bay gelding she had not even noticed before. The horse must have been his, ground tied and waiting patiently while its owner dealt with her emergency. "Hold on to me," he instructed, mounting in one fluid motion before reaching down for her. Eleanor grasped his outstretched hand and felt herself lifted again, settled in front of him on the saddle. His arms came around her to grasp the reins, solid and warm, and somehow reassuring despite her determination never to trust a man again. The bay moved off at a steady walk, heading not across the open grassland, but toward a line of trees Eleanor had not noticed in her panic. Behind them, she could hear Marcus's men reaching the spot where she had fallen. Their shouts of confusion and anger carried clearly in the thin mountain air. "They will track us," she said quietly. "Not where we are going," the man replied. His chest rumbled against her back when he spoke, a deep vibration she could feel through her entire body. "I am Vincent Earnshaw, by the way. People call me the Mountain Man, though I have never been entirely certain why. I live in the mountains, certainly, but it always seemed a rather obvious designation." Despite everything, Eleanor felt a small smile tug at the corners of her mouth. There was something dry and understated about his humor that caught her off guard. "Eleanor Dawson," she said, "and I thank you for your help, though I fear I have brought you nothing but trouble." "Trouble is not new to me," Vincent said. "And any man who chases a woman across the territory with guns drawn deserves whatever trouble comes his way." They entered the tree line, and the world transformed. The open grassland gave way to towering pines that blocked out much of the late afternoon sun. The air grew cooler, scented with pine sap and rich earth. Vincent guided the bay along a path Eleanor could not see, moving with the confidence of someone who knew every tree and rock in these mountains. "How did you happen to be there?" Eleanor asked after a few minutes of silence. "When I fell, I mean." "I was hunting," Vincent said. "Heard your wagon from half a mile away. You were pushing those horses too hard. They would not have lasted another hour at that pace." Eleanor felt shame burn in her cheeks. She had not wanted to hurt the animals, had not wanted any of this. "I did not have a choice," she said softly. "They would have killed me." Vincent's arms tightened almost imperceptibly around her. "Who are they?" And so Eleanor told him. The words spilled out of her like water from a broken dam, the whole sordid story from beginning to end. Marcus's courtship, the planned wedding, the overheard conversation that had revealed his true nature. The theft of the wagon and supplies, the days of running, the constant fear that had dogged her every step. "I know it was wrong," she said when she had finished. The wagon and supplies, they were purchased with his money, even if he stole that money from others. I am no better than a thief myself now, but I could not stay. I could not marry him knowing what I knew. You are nothing like him, Vincent said firmly. You took only what you needed to survive. That is not theft. That is preservation. They rode in silence for a while longer, climbing steadily higher into the mountains. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Eleanor's ankle throbbed with each of the bay's steps, and her shoulder ached where she had landed on it, but she found herself relaxing against Vincent's solid presence. It was foolish, she knew. She had just sworn off men entirely, had decided that trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Yet there was something about this quiet mountain man that felt different, felt safe in a way she could not quite explain. "Where are you taking me?" she asked eventually. "My cabin," Vincent said. "It is another 2 hours from here, up near the tree line. You need to rest, and that ankle needs tending. In the morning we can decide what to do about your friends back there." "They are not my friends," Eleanor said sharply. "Figure of speech," Vincent replied mildly. "Poor choice of words on my part." Eleanor sighed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "I am sorry. I should not have snapped at you. You have been nothing but kind, and I have no right to. You have every right," Vincent interrupted gently. "You have been through an ordeal. You are hurt and frightened and angry. Those are reasonable responses to what has happened to you." His understanding threatened to undo her completely. Eleanor blinked against sudden tears, refusing to let them fall. She had cried enough over Marcus Trent and his betrayal. She would not waste any more tears on him or any other man. The mountains grew steeper and the path more treacherous, but Vincent navigated it all with the ease of long familiarity. True darkness had fallen by the time they finally emerged into a small clearing dominated by a sturdy log cabin. It was larger than Eleanor had expected, well-maintained and solid, with smoke curling from a stone chimney and glass windows that must have cost a fortune to transport up the mountain. "You have a lovely home," Eleanor said as Vincent dismounted and reached up to help her down. "Thank you," he said. "I built it myself 5 years ago. Took me 2 summers to finish." He carried her inside without asking permission, which Eleanor found she did not mind. Her ankle was swelling badly now. She could feel it pressing against her boot, and she doubted she could have walked even if she tried. The interior of the cabin was as well kept as the exterior, surprisingly spacious and organized. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, with comfortable-looking furniture arranged around it. Shelves lined another wall, filled with books that surprised Eleanor. She had not expected a mountain man to be a reader. Vincent settled her carefully on a wide sofa covered in what looked like deer hide. "I need to tend to my horse," he said. "Then I will see to your ankle. There is water in the pitcher on the table if you are thirsty." "Thank you," Eleanor said, "for everything." Vincent nodded once, then disappeared back outside. Eleanor heard him speaking to the bay, heard the horse's soft snort in response. She looked around the cabin with growing curiosity. Everything about it spoke of careful attention and pride of ownership. The floor was swept clean, the dishes stacked neatly on a shelf near what she assumed was the kitchen area. The bed in the corner was made with military precision, covered with a colorful quilt that looked handmade. This was not the home of a crude mountain hermit. This was the home of a man who valued order and beauty, who took pride in his surroundings despite living alone in the wilderness. Vincent returned after about 15 minutes, carrying Eleanor's carpet bag, which he must have retrieved from the abandoned wagon somehow. He set it down beside the sofa without comment, then moved to the fireplace and began building up the flames. "We need to get that boot off before the swelling gets worse," he said once the fire was crackling nicely. "It is going to hurt." "I assumed as much," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice steady. Vincent pulled a low stool over and sat, taking her injured foot gently in his large hands. "Tell me about Philadelphia," he said conversationally. "I have never been east of the Mississippi." Eleanor understood what he was doing, trying to distract her from what was coming. She appreciated the attempt even as she braced herself for pain. "It is crowded," she said. "So many people pressed together, all hurrying about their business. Nothing like the open spaces out here." "Do you miss it?" Vincent's fingers worked at the laces of her boot with surprising dexterity. "I thought I would," Eleanor admitted. "But now I am not so certain. There is something freeing about the West despite everything that has happened." In Philadelphia, there were so many rules, so many expectations. A woman could barely breathe without someone telling her she was doing it wrong. "Ready?" Vincent asked. Eleanor gripped the edge of the sofa and nodded. Vincent pulled the boot off in one smooth motion. Eleanor bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to cry out. White-hot pain shot up her leg and her vision went gray at the edges. When it cleared, Vincent was carefully rolling down her stocking, his expression focused and professional. "Not broken," he said after a moment of gentle probing that nonetheless made Eleanor's eyes water. "Badly sprained, but you should heal fine with rest. I am going to wrap it, but first it needs soaking." He disappeared and returned with a basin of cold water, positioning it carefully before lowering her foot into it. The shock of the cold made Eleanor gasp, but almost immediately the pain began to diminish. Vincent sat back, watching her with those storm-gray eyes. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said quietly. "Those men will not find you. Even if they manage to track us this far, which I doubt, I know these mountains better than anyone. You are safe." "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor asked. "You do not know me." "For all you know, everything I told you could be a lie." "Is it?" "No, but you have only my word on that." Vincent considered this for a moment. "I am a good judge of character," he said finally, "and you do not strike me as a liar. Besides, I saw the fear in your eyes when you heard those men coming. That was not feigned." "I will not be a burden," Eleanor said firmly. "As soon as my ankle heals enough to walk, I will leave, find a town somewhere, make my own way." "Where will you go?" It was a fair question, and one Eleanor did not have a good answer for. She could not return to Philadelphia. Marcus might have people watching for her there, and her father would only insist she honor the engagement. He had invested too much in the connection to let it go easily. Going forward to California seemed equally foolish. She had no money, no prospects, no plan beyond survival. "I do not know," she admitted quietly. "I suppose I will figure it out when the time comes." "You could stay here," Vincent said. The words came out carefully, as though he was feeling his way through unfamiliar territory. "At least through the winter. It comes early in the mountains and it is harsh. You would not survive on your own." "I cannot impose on you like that," Eleanor protested. "You have already done so much." "It would not be an imposition," Vincent said. "I have plenty of room, plenty of supplies, and I could use the company, truth be told. It gets quiet up here." Eleanor studied him carefully, looking for any hint of ulterior motive, any sign that his offer came with strings attached. But his expression was open and honest, his posture relaxed. He was not looking at her the way Marcus had looked at her, like a prize to be won or a mark to be exploited. He was looking at her like a person, plain and simple. "I would need to contribute," she said slowly. "I will not be a charity case. I can cook and clean, mend clothes, tend a garden if you have one." "I have a garden," Vincent said. "And I will not lie, I am a terrible cook. Anything more complicated than roasting meat over a fire generally defeats me." If you can cook, that alone would be worth your stay." Despite everything, Eleanor found herself laughing. It felt strange, that sound bubbling up from her chest after days of fear and grief. "Then we have an agreement, at least through the winter. After that, we can reassess." "After that, we can reassess," Vincent agreed. He wrapped her ankle with strips of clean cloth, his touch gentle despite the size and obvious strength of his hands. When he finished, he built up the fire and made a simple dinner of salt pork and beans that was exactly as uninspired as he had promised. Eleanor ate gratefully nonetheless, surprised by her own hunger. She had not realized how little she had eaten over the past few days. As darkness deepened outside the cabin windows, Vincent pulled out blankets and made up the sofa as a bed for Eleanor. "You take this," he said. "I will sleep by the fire." "This is your home," Eleanor protested. "I cannot take your bed." "The sofa is not my bed," Vincent pointed out reasonably. "My bed is over there, and you are not taking it. The sofa will be more comfortable for you with your ankle. Less movement required in the morning." He had a point, though Eleanor still felt guilty as she settled onto the soft cushions. Vincent banked the fire and spread his own bedroll on the floor nearby, positioning himself between Eleanor and the door. The gesture did not escape her notice. Even in his own home, in the middle of the wilderness miles from any threat, he had placed himself as a barrier between her and potential danger. "Vincent," she said softly into the darkness. "Yes. Thank you for believing me, for helping me. I know I said it before, but I want you to know I mean it. You saved my life today." There was a long pause before he answered. "Get some sleep, Eleanor. Tomorrow will be better." Eleanor closed her eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire and the sound of Vincent's steady breathing. For the first time in days, she felt safe. It would not last, she knew. Nothing good ever lasted. But for this one night, she would let herself believe that perhaps things might work out after all. Sleep claimed her quickly, dragging her down into dreamless oblivion born of exhaustion and relief. She did not wake when Vincent rose several times during the night to check the windows, to listen at the door, to ensure that no one had followed them to this high sanctuary. She did not see the protective way he watched over her, or the grim set of his jaw as he contemplated what he would do if Marcus Trent and his men somehow found their way to his door. Morning came with pale sunlight streaming through the windows. Eleanor woke slowly, disoriented for a moment before memory rushed back. The cabin, the mountain man, the agreement to stay through winter. She sat up carefully, testing her ankle. It was still swollen and sore, but the pain had diminished to a dull throb rather than the sharp agony of the night before. Vincent was already awake, dressed and moving quietly around the cabin. The smell of coffee filled the air, rich and dark and wonderful. He noticed her stirring and brought over a steaming cup, along with what looked like jerky and hard biscuits. "Breakfast," he said with a slight smile. "I told you I was a poor cook. Coffee is about the limit of my skills in the morning." "Coffee is perfect," Eleanor said gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. The first sip was strong enough to make her eyes water, but the second went down smoother. "What time is it?" "Near 7, Vincent said. "I have been up since before dawn, old habit." He settled into a chair across from her, his own cup cradled in one large hand. "I want to go back down the mountain today, check if those men are still searching for you, see if they left any sign of their plans." Eleanor's hand tightened on her cup. "Is that wise?" "If they see you, they will not see me," Vincent said with quiet confidence. "I know how to move through these mountains unseen, but I need to know what we are dealing with, whether they have given up or if they are settling in for a prolonged search." "I should go with you," Eleanor said, even though the thought made her stomach clench with fear. "No," Vincent said firmly. Your ankle needs rest and I can move faster alone. I will be back by nightfall." He paused, then added, "There is a rifle on the wall by the door, loaded and ready. I do not think you will need it, but I want you to know it is there just in case." The thought of Vincent leaving made Eleanor anxious in a way she did not fully understand. She barely knew this man, had spent less than 24 hours in his company, yet already she had come to depend on his steady presence. It was foolish and dangerous, this growing sense of security. She had promised herself she would never trust a man again, and here she was already breaking that vow. "I will be careful," Eleanor said instead of voicing her fears, "and I will bar the door after you leave." Vincent nodded approvingly. "Good. I should be back by dark, but if I am not, do not worry. It might mean I had to wait for cover or take a longer route back." He stood, moving to gather supplies. "Help yourself to anything in the cabin. There are books on the shelf if you want something to pass the time. Water in the barrel outside the door, though you should not go out unless necessary." "I understand," Eleanor said. Vincent paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she could not quite read. "I will come back," he said quietly. "I promise you that." Then he was gone, slipping out into the morning with the same fluid grace he brought to all his movements. Eleanor heard the soft sound of his horse moving off, then silence. She sat very still for a long moment, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the mountain morning. Birds calling to each other, wind rustling through the pines, the distant sound of water running over rocks. Carefully, she made her way to the door and secured the heavy wooden bar across it. Then she returned to the sofa and propped her ankle up, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease in her chest. Vincent would be fine, she told herself. He knew these mountains, knew how to stay hidden. But still, the worry gnawed at her. To distract herself, Eleanor examined the books on Vincent's shelf. There was a surprising variety of fiction and practical manuals, books on animal tracking and plant identification, alongside volumes of poetry and adventure stories. She selected a worn copy of a novel and settled in to read, determined not to spend the entire day watching the door and jumping at every sound. The morning passed slowly. Eleanor read, dozed, read some more. Her ankle continued to ache, but the swelling was definitely going down. By midday, she was hungry enough to investigate Vincent's food supplies. She found dried meat, flour, beans, coffee, and a surprising store of preserved vegetables. With some effort and frequent rests to keep her weight off her injured ankle, she managed to put together a simple stew, filling the cabin with the rich scent of cooking food. It felt good to be doing something useful, something productive. Eleanor had always hated idleness, had always needed to keep her hands busy. In Philadelphia, her days had been filled with the endless round of social calls and needlework, and managing her father's household after her mother's death. Here, stripped of all pretense and social obligation, she found a strange freedom in the simple act of cooking a meal. The afternoon stretched on. Eleanor finished the stew and set it to simmer at the edge of the fire. She explored the cabin more thoroughly, careful not to pry into Vincent's private belongings, but unable to suppress her curiosity about the man who had so unexpectedly entered her life. Everything she saw reinforced her initial impressions. This was a man who valued order and self-sufficiency, who had built a life for himself in the wilderness through sheer determination and skill. As the sun began to set, Eleanor found herself watching the windows anxiously. Vincent had said he would return by nightfall. Surely he should be back soon. Unless something had gone wrong, unless Marcus's men had found him, had hurt him, had the sound of hoofbeats outside made her jump. Eleanor grabbed the rifle from the wall, her heart pounding as she positioned herself away from the door. "Who is there?" She called out, proud that her voice remained steady. "It is Vincent," came the familiar deep voice. "I am alone." Relief flooded through Eleanor so powerfully it left her weak-kneed. She set the rifle aside and unbarred the door, pulling it open to reveal Vincent leading his bay horse. He looked tired but unhurt, his clothes dusty from travel but otherwise unchanged. "I am glad you are back," Eleanor said, stepping aside to let him enter. "I said I would be," Vincent replied, but there was warmth in his voice that suggested he was pleased by her concern. "Something smells good." "I made stew," Eleanor said. "I hope you do not mind that I used your supplies." "Mind. I am delighted." Vincent moved to care for his horse first, as Eleanor had known he would. When he returned, he washed up in the basin by the door and accepted a bowl of stew with evident appreciation. The first bite made him close his eyes with something approaching reverence. "This is wonderful," he said. "Best thing I have eaten in months." "It is just stew," Eleanor said, but she felt pleased nonetheless. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Eleanor finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind all day. "Did you find anything? Any sign of Marcus and his men?" Vincent's expression grew serious. "They spent yesterday searching the area where you fell. Followed the wagon tracks for a few miles before they realized you were not with it. This morning, they seemed to be having an argument. I could not get close enough to hear what was being said, but it looked heated. By midday, they packed up and headed east, back toward the main road." "They are leaving." Eleanor felt hope flicker in her chest. "It appears so," Vincent said cautiously. "But I would not assume it is over. Men like that, men who have been made to look foolish, they do not forget easily. It might be that they decided you are not worth the trouble of searching these mountains, or it might be that they are regrouping, planning to come back better prepared." Eleanor's hope dimmed. "So I am still in danger." "Possibly," Vincent said honestly, "but you are safe here. These mountains are vast and my cabin is not marked on any map. Even if they did come back, even if they somehow learned I helped you, they would never find this place without a guide." "Unless someone told them," Eleanor said quietly. "There is no one to tell them," Vincent said. "The nearest town is 2 days' ride from here, and I visit perhaps twice a year for supplies. I have no close neighbors, no friends who know exactly where my cabin sits. You are as hidden as it is possible to be." Eleanor wanted to believe him. More than that, she wanted to stop looking over her shoulder, stop jumping at every unexpected sound. "What about you?" she asked. "If they did somehow trace me here, you would be in danger too. I have already brought you enough trouble." Vincent's gray eyes met hers steadily. "I can handle trouble. And I told you before, you are not a burden. If it comes to it, if those men somehow find their way here, I will deal with it." There was something in his voice, a quiet certainty that should have been arrogant but somehow was not. This was simply a statement of fact. Vincent would protect her because he had decided to protect her, and he did not make such decisions lightly. "I do not understand you," Eleanor said softly. "You owe me nothing. You do not even know me, yet you risk yourself without hesitation." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. 3 years ago," he said finally, "I came across a woman in these mountains. She had been traveling with a wagon train that got separated in a storm, fell behind, got lost. By the time I found her, she had been alone for 5 days with no food and little water." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I gave her water, shared my food, told her I would lead her back to the main trail in the morning. She was grateful, kept thanking me. That night, after we made camp, she tried to trade herself for my continued help. Told me she assumed that was what I wanted, what all men wanted. She was terrified, but she thought it was the price she had to pay for survival." Eleanor felt something twist in her chest. "What did you do?" "I told her no. Vincent said quietly. Told her that help freely given does not come with a price. Told her she could trust me to get her back to her people without expecting anything in return. The look on her face, the shock and relief and disbelief all mixed together, it has stayed with me. She did not believe me at first, could not believe that a man might help her simply because it was the right thing to do. He looked at Eleanor, and she saw old pain in his eyes. I got her back to her wagon train safely. But I have never forgotten how broken she seemed, how certain she was that her body was the only thing she had to trade for safety. It made me realize how many women must live with that fear, that expectation. I decided then that if I ever had the chance to help someone, to prove that not all men are predators and thieves, I would take it. Eleanor felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She was right to be afraid, she whispered. The world has taught us to expect the worst. I know, Vincent said, and I cannot change the world, but I can be better than the worst. I can be someone you do not have to fear. She will never trust a man again, Eleanor said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. That is what I told myself. After Marcus, after I realized how completely he had fooled me, I swore I would never trust another man as long as I lived. Vincent's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Then I will spend forever proving I am trustworthy, he said simply. However long it takes, whatever I need to do, I will prove that your trust is not misplaced. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Eleanor's heart was pounding, her breath coming short. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. Trust was a weakness that men like Marcus exploited. You cannot promise that, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You cannot promise forever. I can, Vincent said. And I do. I am not Marcus Trent. I am not any of the men who hurt you or the woman I found in the mountains. I am Vincent Earnshaw, and my word is my bond. If I tell you that you are safe with me, then you are safe. If I tell you that I will spend my life proving myself worthy of your trust, then that is exactly what I will do. Eleanor shook her head, pressing her hands to her face. You do not know what you are saying. You do not know me well enough to make such promises. Then I will get to know you, Vincent said. We have all winter. By spring, you will know beyond doubt that I mean what I say. It was too much. The day's strain, the fear, the unexpected kindness, and now this promise that seemed too large to be real. Eleanor felt tears spilling down her cheeks despite her best efforts to hold them back. She was crying, truly crying, for the first time since she fled Philadelphia. All the terror and betrayal and loneliness she had been holding inside came pouring out in great, gasping sobs. Vincent moved without speaking, settling onto the sofa beside her. He did not try to touch her, did not pull her into an embrace or attempt to shush her tears. He simply sat, solid and present, near enough that she could feel his warmth but far enough to give her space. His presence was an offer, not a demand. Gradually, Eleanor's sobs diminished. She felt wrung out, exhausted, but also somehow lighter. She had not realized how much weight she had been carrying until she let some of it go. Slowly, hesitantly, she leaned against Vincent's shoulder. He remained still for a moment. Then carefully, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he wrapped one arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, night fell completely over the mountains, bringing with it the profound darkness that existed far from any town or city. Inside the cabin, the silence was comfortable, almost peaceful. I want to believe you, Eleanor finally said, her voice rough from crying. I want to trust you, but I am so afraid. I know, Vincent said quietly, and I will not rush you. Trust is earned, not demanded. I have time. Eleanor pulled back slightly to look at him. In the dim firelight, His face was all plains and shadows, strong and honest. There was no guile in his expression, no hidden agenda lurking behind his eyes, just patience and determination and something else she was afraid to name. "Why do you live alone up here?" she asked, changing the subject to something safer. "Surely you must have had a life before the mountains." Vincent was quiet for a moment, his arm still around her shoulders. "I did," he said eventually. "I grew up in Missouri on a farm, had 2 brothers and a sister. When the war started, my brothers and I enlisted. We believed in the cause, believed we were fighting for something important." He paused, his jaw tightening. "My older brother was killed at Shiloh. My younger brother died of disease in a prisoner camp. I survived, but I came back to find my parents dead of fever and my sister married and moved away. The farm was being sold for taxes. Everything I knew, everyone I loved was gone." Eleanor's hand found his, squeezing gently. "I am sorry." "I tried to rebuild," Vincent continued. "Took work where I could find it, drifted west with all the other lost souls looking for a fresh start. But everywhere I went, I found the same thing. Greed, violence, people using each other without thought or care. After a few years, I decided I preferred the company of mountains to the company of men." "Yet you helped me," Eleanor said. "Yet I helped you," Vincent agreed. "Because despite everything, despite my cynicism and isolation, I still believe in doing the right thing. The world may be full of people like Marcus Trent, but that does not mean I have to become like them." Eleanor rested her head back on his shoulder. "We are quite a pair, are we not? Both of us hiding from a world that has wounded us." "Perhaps," Vincent said. "Or perhaps we are exactly what each other needs." The words sent a flutter through Eleanor's chest that had nothing to do with fear. She pushed the feeling away, unwilling to examine it too closely. It was too soon, too dangerous to feel anything beyond gratitude and relief. She had known this man for barely a day. Anything more than appreciation for his help would be foolish. Yet as she sat there in the circle of his arm, watching the embers glow in the darkness, Eleanor could not deny the sense of rightness that settled over her. For the first time since her mother died, she felt like she had come home. The days that followed established a routine that became comfortable with surprising speed. Eleanor's ankle healed slowly but steadily under Vincent's careful ministration. He proved to be unexpectedly knowledgeable about healing, with a collection of dried herbs and roots that he used to make poultices and teas that eased pain and reduced swelling. "Where did you learn all this?" Eleanor asked one morning as Vincent wrapped her ankle with fresh bandages soaked in some pungent mixture. "The Shoshone," Vincent said. "There is a tribe that ranges through these mountains. I helped them track a rogue bear a few years back, and they shared some of their knowledge in return. I find their medicine works better than most of what passes for doctoring in the towns." Eleanor was healing in more ways than one. The constant knot of fear in her stomach gradually loosened as days passed without any sign of Marcus or his men. She began to explore the area immediately around the cabin, hobbling short distances on her improving ankle. Vincent showed her the cold stream that provided water, the carefully tended garden plot now sleeping for winter, the small shed where he kept his tools and supplies. She fell into the role of housekeeper naturally, taking over the cooking and cleaning that Vincent had been managing on his own. It felt good to be useful, to contribute to their shared existence. Vincent was unfailingly courteous, always asking before entering a room she occupied, always respecting her privacy and personal space. Yet Eleanor found herself wishing he would be a bit less respectful, would sit a bit closer, would linger a bit longer when their hands accidentally brushed while passing dishes or gathering firewood. It was confusing and frustrating. She had sworn off men, sworn off trust and vulnerability. Yet here she was, thinking about Vincent at odd moments, noticing the way his muscles shifted beneath his shirt when he split wood, finding excuses to be near him. 2 weeks after her arrival, the first snow fell. Eleanor woke to a transformed world, everything blanketed in pristine white that sparkled in the weak winter sunlight. She stood at the window, marveling at the beauty of it, and felt Vincent come up behind her. "Beautiful, is it not?" he said quietly. "I have never seen anything like it," Eleanor breathed. "In Philadelphia, snow was just cold and dirty. This is magical." "It is also deadly," Vincent said, but there was no censure in his voice. "The winter here is harsh and unforgiving. We will be snowed in within a month, unable to leave until the spring thaw. If you have any doubts about staying, we need to discuss them now while I can still get you to a town." Eleanor turned to look at him. "Do you want me to leave?" "No," Vincent said immediately, then seemed surprised by his own vehemence. "That is, you are welcome to stay as long as you wish. I merely want to ensure you are making an informed choice." "I want to stay," Eleanor said, and she realized it was true. Despite everything, despite her fear and her vows and her certainty that she could never trust again, she wanted to stay in this cabin with this quiet, complicated man who kept his promises and respected her boundaries and made her feel safer than she had in years. Something shifted in Vincent's expression, a softening that transformed his rough features. "Then I am glad," he said simply. The winter closed in around them like a fist. The snow fell with increasing frequency, piling up in great drifts that sometimes reached the cabin windows. Vincent checked his traps and hunting lines daily, bringing back rabbits and occasionally a deer that provided fresh meat to supplement their stores. Eleanor marveled at his ability to navigate in the snow, to read the mountains, and weather with an accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. They fell into an easy companionship, talking in the evenings by the fire. Vincent had a dry wit that surprised Eleanor, and a depth of knowledge on subjects ranging from astronomy to botany. She discovered that he had educated himself through the books that lined his shelves, spending long winter nights reading by firelight. "Why do you never go to town?" Eleanor asked one evening as they sat together mending clothes. She had discovered several items in Vincent's wardrobe that desperately needed repair and had taken on the task with determination. "I have little need of what towns offer," Vincent said. "I harvest most of what I require from the mountains. The few things I cannot get here, flour and salt and such, I trade for once or twice a year." "But surely you must get lonely," Eleanor pressed. "Living up here all alone, month after month with no one to talk to." Vincent's hand stilled on the leather strap he was repairing. "I did," he said quietly. "Before you came, I was lonely. I had not realized how much until I had someone to share my days with again." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I hope you do not mind my saying so." Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I do not mind, I feel the same way. I have been alone since my mother died, even though I was surrounded by people in Philadelphia. My father loved me, I know he did, but he did not understand me. He saw me as a problem to be solved, a daughter to be married off appropriately. With you, I feel seen." "You are remarkable, Eleanor," Vincent said. "Stronger than you give yourself credit for. You survived something that would have broken many people, and you did it with courage and grace." "I do not feel very graceful," Eleanor said with a slight laugh. "I feel like I am held together with string and determination." "That is what grace looks like," Vincent said. "Not perfection, but perseverance. Not strength without fear, but courage despite it." Eleanor set down the shirt she was mending and looked at him fully. In the firelight, his dark hair gleamed and his gray eyes were soft. He was a beautiful man, she realized. Not in the conventional way Marcus had been beautiful, all polished charm and practiced smiles. Vincent's beauty was raw and honest, carved from hard living and harder choices. "I am starting to trust you," she said quietly. It was a confession, almost an accusation. "I told myself I would never trust a man again, and yet here I am, breaking that vow." Vincent set his own work aside and moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "Is that such a terrible thing?" "It terrifies me," Eleanor admitted. "What if I am wrong again? What if you are not who you seem?" "Then you will deal with it," Vincent said. "You are not the same woman who fled Philadelphia, Eleanor. You are stronger now, more certain of yourself. Even if I were to betray you, which I will not, you would survive it. You would go on." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle despite the obvious strength in his fingers. "But I will not betray you. This is not infatuation or temporary fondness. What I feel for you is deep and true and permanent. I am falling in love with you, Eleanor Dawson, and I want you to know it. I want you to have time to decide how you feel, what you want. There is no pressure, no expectation. I simply want you to know where I stand." Eleanor's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She stared at their joined hands, unable to meet his eyes. "You cannot love me," she whispered. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Vincent said. "I know you are kind and brave and resilient. I know you make the cabin feel like a home instead of just a shelter. I know that when you laugh, which is still too rare, it is the best sound I have ever heard. I know I wake up each morning grateful that you are here, and I go to sleep each night hoping you will still be here in the morning." "Vincent," Eleanor breathed and finally looked up at him. What she saw in his face stole her breath. There was no guile there, no manipulation. Just raw honesty and affection, and a longing that mirrored something deep in her own chest. "You do not have to say anything," Vincent said quickly. "I do not expect you to return my feelings. I only wanted you to know, to give you the truth so you can make your own choices with full knowledge." Eleanor knew she should pull her hand away, should reinforce the boundaries she had tried so hard to maintain. Instead, she found herself leaning closer, drawn by something stronger than fear or logic. "I do not know what I feel," she said honestly. "I am confused and frightened, and I cannot tell if what I feel is real or just gratitude for your kindness." "That is all right," Vincent said. "You have time to figure it out. We have all winter, and beyond that if you wish." "You said you would spend forever proving you were trustworthy," Eleanor said. "Did you mean that?" "Every word," Vincent confirmed. Eleanor took a shaky breath. "Then kiss me," she said. "Please. I need to know if this is real." Vincent's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she thought he would refuse. Then slowly, so slowly, he leaned in. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing gently across her skin. When his lips finally met hers, it was soft and careful, a question rather than a demand. Eleanor felt something inside her crack open, some frozen place she had not even known existed. The kiss was nothing like the few chaste pecks Marcus had given her during their courtship. This was warm and real and suffused with an emotion that made her chest ache. She leaned into it, her hand coming up to rest against Vincent's chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palm. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Eleanor felt tears on her cheeks. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I know," Vincent said, pressing his forehead against hers. "But you do not have to be afraid alone anymore." They sat like that for a long time, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, something new and fragile began to grow between them, something that might one day become the kind of love that lasted forever. The winter deepened, and with it, the bond between Eleanor and Vincent. They moved around each other with increasing ease, small touches becoming natural and frequent. A hand on the small of the back while passing in the cabin, shoulders brushing as they sat together reading. Vincent's arm around Eleanor as they watched the fire. Eleanor was still afraid, but the fear was gradually being replaced by something else. Hope, perhaps, or faith. She watched Vincent carefully, looking for signs of deception, for cracks in his facade, but there was no facade. He was exactly who he appeared to be, constant and honest and true to his word in every small way. It was the small things that convinced her. The way he always made sure she had the warmest spot by the fire. How he saved the best pieces of meat for her plate. The care he took with her comfort and happiness, never demanding anything in return. He kept his promise to respect her boundaries, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But Eleanor found herself wanting to give more. Wanting to close the distance between them that was rapidly becoming artificial. One evening, about 6 weeks after she had arrived at the cabin, she made a decision. "Vincent," she said as they sat together after dinner, "I want to tell you about my life, all of it. Not just the parts involving Marcus, but everything, who I was before I came here." Vincent set down the book he had been pretending to read. "I would like that," he said simply, and so Eleanor told him. About growing up in Philadelphia, the daughter of a moderately successful merchant. About her mother's long illness and death when Eleanor was 16, and how she had taken over managing her father's household. About the loneliness of her life, surrounded by people but truly known by none of them. About her dreams of something more than endless social calls and needlework, dreams she had been taught to suppress as inappropriate for a woman of her station. "Marcus seemed like an escape," she said quietly. "He talked about the West like it was a place of freedom and possibility. I thought marriage to him would be my chance to finally live, to have adventures and see something beyond the same streets I had walked my entire life." "You did get your adventure," Vincent said with a slight smile. "Just not the way you planned." "No," Eleanor agreed, "but I think this is better. What I have here with you, it is real in a way nothing in Philadelphia ever was. There, everything was artifice and performance. Here, I can just be myself." "Your true self is extraordinary," Vincent said. "I hope you know that." Eleanor felt warmth bloom in her chest. "My turn to ask you something," she said. "Why have you never married? You must have had opportunities before you came to the mountains." Vincent's expression grew distant. "I was engaged once," he said quietly. "Before the war, her name was Catherine, and I thought she was the love of my life. When I left for the fighting, I promised I would come back for her, that we would marry and build a life together." He paused, pain flickering across his face. "I did come back eventually, but she had not waited. She married someone else while I was gone, someone who had stayed home and built a successful business. When I went to see her, to find out why she had not answered my letters, she told me I was not the same man she had agreed to marry. The war had changed me, hardened me. She said she did not recognize me anymore." "That must have been devastating," Eleanor said softly. "It was," Vincent admitted. "But looking back now, I think she was right. I was not the same man. The war took the boy who left Missouri and gave back someone else entirely. Catherine wanted the life we had planned, the farm and children and quiet respectability. I could not give her that anymore. I did not want that anymore." He looked at Eleanor, his gray eyes serious. "That is why I want you to be certain of your feelings. I am not an easy man, Eleanor. I live a hard life in a harsh place. I cannot offer you comfort or society or any of the things you were raised to expect. All I can offer is myself, exactly as I am, and a life in these mountains." Eleanor reached for his hand. "You still do not understand," she said. "All those things you think I want, comfort and society and respectability, I never wanted them. They were chosen for me, expected of me. What I want is to be valued for who I am, not what I represent. I want to make my own choices and live with the consequences. I want to be with someone who sees me, truly sees me, and chooses me anyway. You offer me all of that and more. Eleanor, Vincent breathed, and then he was kissing her again. This time there was nothing tentative about it. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and Eleanor went willingly. She could feel the controlled strength in his body, the careful way he held her as if she was something precious. Her hands slid up to tangle in his hair, and she kissed him back with all the confused longing and growing affection that had been building inside her for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I know it is too soon. I know I promised not to pressure you, but I cannot hold it back any longer. I love you, Eleanor." Eleanor felt her heart swell until it seemed too large for her chest. She was still afraid, some part of her still screaming warnings and reminders of betrayal. But stronger than the fear was the certainty growing in her heart, the knowledge that what she felt for this man was real and deep and worth the risk. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have for weeks now, but I was too frightened to admit it. I love you, Vincent Earnshaw, and it terrifies me." Vincent pulled back just enough to see her face, his hands coming up to frame her cheeks. "We will be afraid together then," he said. "And every day I will work to be worthy of the gift you are giving me." They held each other as the fire burned low, neither wanting to move or break the spell of the moment. Outside, the wind howled through the peaks, driving snow against the cabin walls. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Eleanor and Vincent found a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. That night, for the first time since she arrived, Eleanor did not sleep on the sofa. She shared Vincent's bed, and though they did nothing more than hold each other through the long winter darkness, it felt like a sacred trust. Vincent kept his arms around her all night, and Eleanor finally understood what it meant to feel truly safe. The weeks that followed were the happiest Eleanor had ever known. She and Vincent existed in their own small world, cut off from civilization by walls of snow and distance. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories and dreams and fears. They worked together maintaining the cabin and their supplies, falling into easy teamwork that spoke of growing intimacy. And they loved each other, with increasing passion and tenderness. Vincent continued to be careful with Eleanor, always asking permission, always making sure she was comfortable and willing. But Eleanor was discovering her own desires, her own capacity for passion. She had been raised to think of physical intimacy as a duty wives owed their husbands, something to be endured rather than enjoyed. Vincent showed her how wrong those teachings had been. He touched her like she was precious, like every curve and hollow of her body was a wonder to be explored and appreciated. He paid attention to what made her gasp and sigh, learning her pleasure with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. And when they finally came together fully, about 8 weeks after Eleanor arrived at the cabin, it was nothing like she had been taught to expect. It was beautiful and awkward and overwhelming, tender and passionate in equal measure. Vincent moved slowly, constantly checking that she was all right, that he was not hurting her. Eleanor clung to him, overcome by sensation and emotion, and when it was over she cried from the sheer release of tension she had been carrying for months. "Did I hurt you?" Vincent asked urgently, gathering her close. "Eleanor, please tell me if I hurt you." "No," Eleanor managed through her tears. "You did not hurt me. It is just I did not know it could be like that. I thought it would be different, cold and clinical and uncomfortable. But that was wonderful." Relief flooded Vincent's face. He held her close, pressing kisses to her forehead and cheeks. "It will get better," he promised. "As we learn each other, as you become more comfortable, I want to spend my life learning what makes you happy." And he was right. As winter progressed and they explored their physical connection, it did get better. Eleanor discovered she was not cold or unresponsive as she had feared. With Vincent, with his patience and care and obvious devotion, she was passionate and responsive and joyful in their intimacy. But it was not just the physical connection that deepened. Eleanor found herself sharing thoughts and fears she had never voiced to anyone. Vincent listened without judgment, offering comfort or advice as needed but mostly just being present, bearing witness to her experiences. And he shared his own darkness in return, the nightmares from the war that still sometimes woke him, the guilt he carried over his brother's deaths, the fear that he was somehow broken beyond repair. "You are not broken," Eleanor told him fiercely one night after a bad dream had jerked him awake. "You are wounded, but wounds can heal. And you are not alone anymore. I am here and I am not leaving." Vincent pulled her close, his arms almost painfully tight. "I do not deserve you," he whispered into her hair. "Fortunately, that is not your decision to make," Eleanor said. "I choose you, Vincent. Every day, for as long as you will have me, I choose you." Winter began to loosen its grip as they moved into March. The snow still fell, but less frequently, and the sun grew warmer when it appeared. Vincent began making preparations for spring, checking his traps and equipment, planning the garden that would need planting once the ground thawed. "I have been thinking," Eleanor said one morning as they sat over coffee. "When the snow melts enough for travel, we should go to the nearest town. Get married properly, legal and binding." Vincent nearly dropped his cup. "Are you proposing to me?" he asked, his eyes lighting with surprised delight. Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks but held his gaze. "I suppose I am. We love each other, we have built a life together. It seems the logical next step, assuming you want to marry me." "Want to?" Vincent set down his cup and pulled Eleanor into his lap, holding her close. "Eleanor, I have wanted to marry you since the first month you were here. I was only waiting until you were ready, until you felt safe enough to make that commitment." "I am ready," Eleanor said. "I want to be your wife, Vincent. I want to build a real life with you, have a family if we are blessed that way. I want everything." Vincent kissed her with a thoroughness that left them both breathless. "Then we will go as soon as the road's clear," he promised. "We will find a preacher and do this properly. I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours." The happiness Eleanor felt in that moment was almost frightening in its intensity. She had not thought she could ever feel this way again, safe and loved and hopeful about the future. Vincent had given her all of that and more. He had kept his promise, had spent every day proving himself worthy of her trust. And somehow, impossibly, she had learned to trust again. When the spring thaw finally came in late April, Vincent and Eleanor made the long journey down out of the mountains. It took 3 days of travel, following trails that were muddy and treacherous with snowmelt. Eleanor marveled at how different the world looked from when she had first fled Marcus. Then, she had been running in fear. Now, she rode beside the man she loved, heading toward a future she actually wanted. They reached the small town of Placitas, New Mexico Territory, on a bright spring morning. It was not much of a town, just a handful of buildings clustered around a central square. But it had a general store, a smithy, a saloon, and most importantly, a small church with a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. Reverend James was surprised to find a couple wanting to marry on such short notice, but Vincent was persuasive. He paid the man's fee and arranged for 2 witnesses from the general store. The ceremony was brief and simple, with Eleanor wearing the best dress she had brought from Philadelphia and Vincent in a clean shirt he had saved for special occasions. "Do you, Vincent Earnshaw, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the Reverend asked. "I do," Vincent said, his voice strong and sure, his eyes never leaving Eleanor's face. "And do you, Eleanor Dawson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes as she said, "I do." The Reverend smiled. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of New Mexico and Almighty God, I pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Vincent pulled Eleanor into his arms and kissed her soundly, to the delight of their small audience. Eleanor kissed him back, pouring all her love and joy and gratitude into the embrace. They were married. She was Eleanor Earnshaw now, bound to this mountain man who had saved her life and won her heart. After the ceremony, they spent the night at the town's small boarding house, a luxury after months in the mountains. They made love with the intensity of newlyweds, christening their marriage properly. Afterward, lying in Vincent's arms in the unfamiliar bed, Eleanor felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "I love you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I would never give up on you," Vincent murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You are my life now, Eleanor. Everything I am, everything I have, it is yours." They stayed in Placitas for 3 days, stocking up on supplies and enjoying the novelty of being around other people. But both of them were eager to return to their mountain sanctuary, to the cabin that had become home. On the 4th day, they loaded their pack horses and began the journey back. The mountains welcomed them home with clear skies and warm sun. Everything was coming alive with spring, birds singing in the trees, new grass pushing up through the last patches of snow. When they finally crested the last ridge and saw the cabin below, Eleanor felt her heart swell. This was home. This was where she belonged. The spring and summer that followed were idyllic. Vincent taught Eleanor to track and hunt, skills she took to with surprising aptitude. She expanded his garden, adding vegetables and even a few flowers she had brought seeds for. They fell into a comfortable routine, working together during the day and loving each other at night. In July, Eleanor missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought it was just the stress of their life or some other temporary condition. But when August came and went with no change, she could no longer deny the truth. She was carrying Vincent's child. The realization filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. They were so far from any doctor or midwife. What if something went wrong? What if she could not do this? But when she told Vincent, his reaction banished her fears. "A baby," he breathed, his hand coming to rest on her still flat stomach with a reverence that made Eleanor's eyes burn with tears. "Eleanor, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" she asked. "I know we did not plan this so soon." "Happy?" Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she was made of glass. "I am overwhelmed, delighted, terrified and grateful and more in love with you than I thought possible. A baby, our baby." He insisted she stop doing any heavy work immediately, taking over most of the physical labor around the cabin. Eleanor protested that she was pregnant, not an invalid, but secretly she appreciated his care. As summer turned to fall and her belly began to swell, Vincent was constantly attentive, making sure she was comfortable and happy and well fed. "I want to go to Placitas before the snow comes," Eleanor said in October. "I want to stock up on supplies for when the baby comes, and I would feel better having spoken to someone who knows about birthing." Vincent agreed immediately. They made the journey down the mountain, moving more slowly to accommodate Eleanor's condition. In Placitas, they found a woman named Mrs. Chen who had delivered most of the babies in the area for the past 20 years. She examined Eleanor and pronounced her healthy, with the baby likely to arrive in late February or early March. "First babies can be unpredictable," Mrs. Chen warned. Early or late, there is no way to know. But you seem strong and healthy. You should do fine. She gave them supplies and advice, showing Vincent what to watch for and what to do when Eleanor's time came. I would come myself, she said apologetically, but I cannot make it up those mountains in winter. You will have to manage on your own. We will manage, Vincent said firmly, his hand finding Eleanor's. We will be fine. They returned to the cabin laden with supplies, including fabric Eleanor had bought to make clothes for the baby. As winter closed in again, Eleanor spent hours sewing tiny gowns and blankets while Vincent built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and carving delicate patterns into the sides. It is beautiful, Eleanor said, running her hand over the silky wood. Our child is blessed to have you as a father. Vincent looked up from his work, his expression vulnerable. I am terrified, he admitted. What if I do not know what to do? What if I fail you, fail our child? Eleanor moved to sit beside him, taking his face in her hands. You will not fail us, she said firmly. You are the best man I know, Vincent Earnshaw. You are patient and kind and strong. You will be a wonderful father, just as you are a wonderful husband. Vincent pulled her close, careful of her belly. I love you so much it frightens me sometimes, he confessed. You and this child, you are my entire world. If anything happened to either of you, nothing will happen, Eleanor said, though she felt her own fears mirroring his. We will be fine. We have each other and that is enough. Winter arrived early that year with heavy snows beginning in November. Eleanor grew larger and slower, her belly round and tight. The baby was active, kicking and moving at all hours. Vincent loved to put his hand on her stomach and feel their child move, his expression full of wonder. Eleanor's time came in late February, during a blizzard that howled around the cabin with terrifying force. She woke Vincent in the middle of the night, her water having broken and contractions already strong. It is time, she said, trying to keep the fear from her voice. Vincent was calm efficiency itself. He built up the fire, heated water, gathered the supplies Mrs. Chen had given them. As Eleanor's labor progressed, he stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, offering whatever comfort he could. The labor was long and difficult. Eleanor had not imagined pain like this existed. There were moments when she was certain she could not continue, could not push through one more contraction. But Vincent never left her side, his voice steady and sure, reminding her to breathe, telling her how strong she was, how proud he was of her. Finally, as dawn broke gray and cold outside, their son entered the world with a lusty cry that made both parents weep. Vincent caught the baby expertly, having practiced on a borrowed doll. He cut and tied the cord, then wrapped their son in a soft blanket and placed him in Eleanor's arms. A boy, Eleanor breathed, looking down at the red, wrinkled face of their child. Vincent, we have a son. He is perfect, Vincent said, his voice thick with emotion. You are perfect. God, Eleanor, you are the strongest person I have ever known. They named him Thomas, after Vincent's older brother who had died in the war. Thomas Earnshaw came into the world healthy and strong, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. Vincent proved to be as devoted a father as Eleanor had known he would be, rising in the night to walk the floor with a fussy baby, changing soiled cloths without complaint, singing lullabies in his deep voice until Thomas quieted. I never knew I could love like this, Vincent said one night as he held their sleeping son. I thought what I felt for you was the limit of my capacity, but this, loving you and him together, it is beyond anything I imagined. Eleanor watched her husband with their son and felt her heart overflow. This was everything she had never dared to dream of having. A home, a family, a partner who loved and cherished her. She had traveled so far from that terrified woman fleeing Philadelphia. That woman would barely recognize her now. Thomas thrived through his first spring and summer, growing from a tiny infant into a chubby, smiling baby who brought endless joy to his parents. Eleanor discovered she loved being a mother, finding satisfaction in nurturing this tiny life she and Vincent had created. Vincent was patient and playful with Thomas, making toys and playing endless games of peek-a-boo that sent the baby into gales of laughter. In August, they took Thomas on his first journey to Placida's. Mrs. Chen declared him the healthiest baby she had seen in months, and the townsfolk made a fuss over the mountain man's child. Vincent beamed with pride, showing off his son to anyone who would look. That night, lying in bed at the boarding house with Thomas asleep in his cradle beside them, Vincent turned to Eleanor with a serious expression. "I want to tell you something," he said. Eleanor's heart clenched with sudden worry. "What is it?" "Before I met you, I was just existing," Vincent said quietly. "Going through the motions, surviving but not truly living. I had accepted that I would spend my life alone, that I was too damaged for anything more. Then you crashed into my life, literally, and everything changed. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to want to be better. You saved me, Eleanor, just as much as I saved you." Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. "We saved each other," she whispered. "I was so broken, so certain I could never trust anyone again. You spent every day proving I was wrong, showing me that love could be real and safe and forever. You kept your promise, Vincent. You proved you were trustworthy, and now I trust you completely." Vincent kissed her softly. "I love you more every day," he said. "I will spend the rest of my life grateful that you took a chance on a lonely mountain man. I will spend the rest of my life grateful that you refused to give up on me," Eleanor replied. They held each other in the darkness, listening to their son's soft breathing, and both knew they had found something precious. Something that would last through whatever challenges life might bring. The years that followed were full and rich. Eleanor gave birth to 2 more children, a daughter they named Catherine, and another son they called James. The cabin was expanded to accommodate their growing family, with Vincent adding rooms and improvements as needed. The children grew healthy and strong in the mountain air, learning to hunt and track and survive from their father, learning to read and garden and sew from their mother. Thomas grew into a serious boy with his father's quiet strength and his mother's determination. Catherine was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and exploring the mountains despite her mother's worried protests. James was gentle and thoughtful, content to sit with books or help his mother in the garden. Vincent and Eleanor continued to grow together, their love deepening with each passing year. They still made the journey to Placida's twice a year, maintaining a connection to civilization even while preferring their mountain sanctuary. They were known in town as the Mountain Family, respected for their self-sufficiency, and admired for the obvious love they shared. When Marcus Trent's name surfaced in a wanted poster at the general store, warning of a confidence man operating throughout the territories, Eleanor felt nothing but relief that she had escaped when she did. Vincent saw her looking at the poster and pulled her close. "He cannot hurt you anymore," he said firmly. "You are safe and you are mine." "I have been safe for years," Eleanor replied. "You made me safe in every way that matters." As their children grew, Vincent and Eleanor made sure they understood how their parents had found each other. They told the story of how Eleanor had crashed into Vincent's life, how he had promised to spend forever proving he was trustworthy, how they had both been wounded but had found healing in each other. "The world can be cruel," Eleanor told her children. "People will hurt you, sometimes deliberately and sometimes through carelessness. But the right person, the one who truly loves you, will make you feel safe. They will prove their worth through actions, not just words. They will choose you every day, even when it is hard. Your mother taught me to hope again, Vincent added. She showed me that being broken does not mean being beyond repair. That love is worth the risk of pain. Thomas, at age 15, looked between his parents with the beginning understanding of someone approaching adulthood. You still love each other like you did when you first met, he observed. I can see it in how you look at each other. More, Vincent said, reaching for Eleanor's hand. I love your mother more with each passing year. She is my heart, the best part of me. Eleanor squeezed his hand, blinking back tears. After 20 years of marriage, Vincent still had the power to move her to tears with his simple declarations of love. The years continued to pass. Thomas left home to work as a tracker for the army, putting his father's teachings to good use. Catherine married a rancher from Placitas and moved to the valley, close enough to visit but far enough to establish her own life. James stayed at the cabin longest, content to help his father and learning the mountains as thoroughly as Vincent himself knew them. When James finally left to pursue studies in medicine in Santa Fe, Eleanor and Vincent found themselves alone in the cabin for the first time in over 20 years. The silence was strange at first, the lack of children's voices and activities leaving a void that took time to adjust to. But they adjusted, falling into a new rhythm that was comfortable and sweet. They had the time now to take long walks in the mountains, to lie in bed late talking, to rediscover the intimacy that had gotten slightly lost in the chaos of raising children. I would not change a single thing, Eleanor said one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. She was 50 now, her dark hair threaded with silver, her face lined with years of laughter and worry. But she was beautiful to Vincent, more beautiful than the day he had first seen her. Neither would I, Vincent agreed. He was 53, his hair more gray than dark now, his body still strong but bearing the marks of a life lived hard. Every choice, every moment brought me here to you. How could I regret any of it? Eleanor leaned against his shoulder, fitting perfectly into the curve of his body as she had for decades. Do you remember what I said that first day? That I would never trust a man again. I remember, Vincent said, and I remember my response. That I would spend forever proving I was trustworthy. You did it, Eleanor said softly. You proved it every single day in 1,000 small ways. You kept your promise, Vincent. You gave me forever. Vincent pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her silver-threaded hair. Forever is not long enough, he said, but it is a good start. They sat together as the sun set, watching the mountains paint themselves in shades of gold and purple. Behind them, the cabin stood solid and warm, filled with memories of the life they had built together. Ahead of them, years still stretched, however many they might be granted. Eleanor had traveled a long road from that terrified woman fleeing Philadelphia. She had learned to trust again, to love again, to believe in the possibility of happiness. Vincent had kept his promise, spending every day of their life together proving himself worthy of the gift she had given him. They had found each other in the wilderness, two wounded souls seeking shelter from different storms. What they built together was more than survival. It was a life, full and rich and overflowing with love. It was proof that broken things could be mended, that trust once lost could be regained, that love could heal even the deepest wounds. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Vincent and Eleanor rose and walked hand in hand back to their cabin. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys, as every day did. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything for the past 30 years. And that was more than enough. That was everything,